My dear child, my beloved son, my precious daughter, it's me, Jesus. I come to you tonight, in this moment when the world feels heavy on your shoulders, when sleep flees like a startled bird, leaving you alone with thoughts that spin endlessly. Know you're there, perhaps lying in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling your heart race with worries you can't control. I know every beat of your heart, every weary sigh, every tear that silently rolls down your face. You are not alone. You never have been. Tonight, I want to tell you a special story. A story about a window that opened in heaven, and how through it, peace came to a troubled heart, much like yours. It's a true story that happened long ago, but continues to happen today, right now. As you listen to me, close your eyes for a moment. Breathe with me. Inhale, exhale. Feel how the air slowly fills your lungs, carrying with it my loving presence. I am here, I am with you. And through this story, I want to touch the wounds of your soul, calm the storm of your thoughts, and wrap you in the sacred mantle of my love. You know, my child, there are moments in life when we need something more than medicine or human advice. We need the divine touch, the presence that transcends the visible and reaches the impossible. This story I'm about to tell isn't just about physical healing, but about complete healing, body, soul, and spirit. You who listen to me now, regardless of your age, your story, your pain, or your doubts, know that this message was prepared especially for you, like a love letter written with heavenly ink. Every word was chosen to touch exactly where you need it most. So, make yourself more comfortable. Let your breathing become slower and deeper. Allow your muscles to relax, one by one, and come with me on this journey through the window that opens to heaven, where miracles happen and hearts find the rest they've been searching for. It was a night like many others in Jerusalem, when I met a man named Simon, not the fisherman you know as Peter, but another Simon, a craftsman who worked with wood and iron, creating beautiful windows for the homes of the city's wealthy. Simon lived tormented by insomnia. Night after night, he stayed awake, his eyes burning with exhaustion, but his mind unable to find peace. Worries consumed him like a fever that wouldn't break, work that never seemed to be enough, children who needed more than he could provide, a wife who had fallen ill and needed expensive care he didn't know how to afford. During the day, his hands trembled as he worked. Neighbors began to comment on the deep circles that marked his face, how he seemed to age years in a matter of weeks. Simon had tried everything: herbal teas his mother-in-law prepared, prayers in temple rituals, even consulting doctors who charged fortunes for potions that didn't work. On that particular night, Simon was in his workshop trying to finish a very special window. It was an important commission from a wealthy family that would pay well, and he knew he couldn't make any mistakes. But his hands shook so badly that the joints wouldn't fit perfectly. The wood seemed to resist his touch, and frustration grew within him like a storm. That's when I decided to visit him. Not with great fanfare or supernatural phenomena, but in the way I most love to appear: simple, human, like a carpenter who understands another carpenter's work. I knocked gently on his workshop door. "Peace be with you, Simon," I said when he opened the door. His red, tired eyes studied me with suspicion and curiosity. "I know you don't know me, but I came because I heard about your exceptional work with windows. I need a very special one." Simon hesitated, but something in my voice reassured him. Perhaps it was the gentle tone, perhaps the sincerity he perceived in my eyes. He invited me in, And there, among tools and pieces of wood, we began a conversation that would change his life forever. "I can't work properly anymore," he confessed, his hands trembling as he showed me the unfinished window. "I haven't slept in weeks. My mind won't stop spinning like a mill wheel that never finds rest. I'm afraid I'm losing my sanity." I looked at him with all the compassion that overflows from my heart. "Simon," I said, placing my hand on his tense shoulder, "you're not losing your sanity. You're carrying a weight that wasn't made for your shoulders to bear alone." In that moment, I began to work alongside him on the window. My hands, which knew intimately and profoundly the work of wood, guided his together. We fitted pieces that before seemed impossible to align. And as we worked, I spoke to him about burdens and rest, about how the human heart wasn't created to carry the weight of the world alone. "Look at this window," I said when it was finally finished. "It was made to open, to let in light, to allow fresh air to circulate. Your heart is like this window, Simon, but you keep it closed, locked, trying to protect yourself from pain, but also preventing peace from entering." He looked at me with eyes that began to shine with timid hope. "How can I open this window of my heart? How can I find the peace I've been searching for?" And so, my dear listener, began one of the most beautiful transformations I've ever witnessed. Simon was about to discover that sometimes, when we open our souls to the divine, windows also open in heaven. That same night, after we finished the window, I sat with Simon in his small workshop. The light from an oil lamp danced gently between us, creating welcoming shadows on the walls filled with tools and half-worked wood. "Simon," I began, my voice as soft as the wind blowing through the room's only open window, "I want you to do something with me. Something that may seem simple, but has a power you don't yet understand." He looked at me with curiosity mixed with exhaustion. His eyes, though still marked by sleepless nights, were beginning to show a spark of hope he hadn't seen in a long time. "Close your eyes," I asked gently, "and breathe with me. Don't force anything, just allow your breathing to find the rhythm of mine." Simon obeyed, and slowly, very slowly, his breathing began to synchronize with mine. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Each movement of air in his lungs seemed to carry away some of the tension that had inhabited his muscles for so long. "Now," I continued, my voice becoming even softer, "I want you to imagine that inside your chest there's a window very much like those you build, but this one is special. This window separates your heart from heaven." I could see, even with his eyes closed, how Simon dove into this image. His breathing deepened, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "For years," I continued, "this window has remained closed. Closed by fear, by worry, by the feeling that you need to control everything alone. But tonight, Simon, you're going to learn to open it." Then, something extraordinary began to happen. As I spoke, and as Simon surrendered to this experience, a visible peace began to descend upon him. It was as if an invisible hand was smoothing the worry lines on his forehead, as if a heavenly balm were being applied to the wounds of his soul. "I see the window," he murmured, his voice full of wonder. It's beginning to open." "Yes," I confirmed, my heart overflowing with joy. "And do you know what's on the other side of that window, Simon? It's not the emptiness you feared. It's not the terrifying unknown. It's my love for you. It's my constant presence. It's the guarantee that you will never, ever be alone." Tears began to flow down Simon's cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of liberation, of a man who finally understood that he didn't need to carry the world on his shoulders. "I feel it," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I feel a presence, a peace I've never experienced before. It's like my heart is breathing for the first time in years." "This is the first opening," I explained. "The opening of consciousness. You've just discovered that you're not alone, that you never have been. But there's more, Simon. There are other openings, other windows that can open in your life." We spent hours together that night. I taught him how to recognize the moments when anxiety tried to close his heart's window again. I showed him how, through conscious breathing and remembering my presence, he could keep it open. "Every time you feel worry rising," I instructed, "remember, there's a window in your heart that connects directly to me. Through it, you can pour out your anxieties, your pain, your fears. And through it, I pour over you my peace, my love, my strength." When we finally said goodbye that dawn, Simon was a different man. His eyes, though still tired, shone with an inner light that didn't exist when we first met. His shoulders no longer carried the weight of the entire world. "Will I be able to sleep tonight?" he asked, almost like a child who fears the good dream might end. I smiled at him with all the tenderness of my heart. "Simon, when the heart's window is open to heaven, sleep comes as a natural blessing. You won't need to force it or chase after it. It will come to you, gentle as a summer breeze." And that's exactly what happened. For the first time in months, Simon slept deeply, cradled by the certainty that someone greater than himself was taking care of everything that troubled him. But this was only the first of many openings he would experience. Heaven had much more to reveal. In the days that followed, Simon discovered that opening the heart's window was just the beginning. There was a whole new way of living waiting for him, a way of existing where miracles became part of everyday life. My dear listener, I want you to understand something fundamental about how I work in the lives of those who open their hearts to me. My miracles don't always come with great spectacles or supernatural phenomena. Most of the time, they manifest through small daily graces, subtle as morning dew, but powerful as the force that moves mountains. In the days following our first encounter, Simon began to experience these small wonders. The first came the next morning, when he woke naturally, without the feeling of having fought against sleep all night. His eyes opened gently, like flowers blooming with the first ray of sun, and for the first time in months, he felt rested. "It's true," he murmured to himself, still lying down, testing this new sensation of peace. The window really opened. He got up and went to his workshop, where he found the window we had finished together the previous night. Under daylight, it seemed even more beautiful, more perfect than he remembered. Every joint was flawless. Every detail revealed a mastery he didn't know he possessed. But the real miracle began when he picked up his tools to start the day's work. His hands, which for weeks had trembled with anxiety and exhaustion, now moved with firmness and precision. Work flowed through him like a river finding its natural bed. I was there, invisible to human eyes, but present in every movement of his hands, in every creative decision he made. We worked together in a silent but deeply real partnership, and Simon could feel this presence, though he couldn't completely explain it. Around noon, when the sun was high and strong, a man Simon didn't know arrived at the workshop. He was well-dressed, evidently prosperous, but his face carried an expression of deep sadness. "I heard about your work," the man said, examining the windows displayed in the workshop. "I need something special. My daughter is very sick. The doctors say she doesn't have much time. I want her room to have the most beautiful window in all of Jerusalem. I want her to be able to see the sky, and for the sky to be able to see her." Simon's heart filled with compassion. Through the open window in his own heart, he could feel that father's pain, could understand the desperation and love that motivated him. "I'll make that window," Simon promised without hesitation, "and it will be the most beautiful I've ever created." The man offered to pay a generous amount, but Simon refused any payment. "This window will be a gift," he said, "a gift from heaven to your daughter." I smiled upon hearing those words. Simon was learning one of life's most important spiritual lessons. When our inner window is open, we become channels of blessings for others. Generosity flows naturally from a heart connected to the divine. Simon worked on that window like he had never worked before. Every piece of wood seemed personally chosen by heavenly hands. Every joint formed with a perfection that defied his own experience. And as he worked, he prayed, not the formal prayers he had learned at the temple, but intimate conversations with me, like a son speaking with his beloved father. "Lord," he would say, while carving delicate details in the frame, "let this window bring hope to that girl. Let her see your glory through it and find peace." 3 days later, the window was ready. It was truly a masterpiece, but more than that, it was a prayer materialized in wood and glass. When the man came to collect it, tears ran down his face upon seeing it. "It's perfect," he whispered. "It's exactly what I had dreamed of, but didn't know how to explain." Simon and I accompanied the man to his house. The girl, named Rachel, was only 12 years old. She was pale and fragile, but her eyes shone with a special light when she saw the window being installed in her room. "Daddy," she said, her voice weak but full of wonder, "it's like heaven came to live in my room." That night, something extraordinary happened. Rachel, who for weeks couldn't sleep due to pain and discomfort, fell into a deep sleep, cradled by the peace that emanated through that special window. And over the following days, her condition began to gradually improve. The doctors were perplexed. The fever that had consumed her for months began to subside. Her appetite returned. Color came back to her face. It wasn't an instant, dramatic cure, but a gentle and constant restoration, as if heavenly forces were working gently in her body. Simon learned of the girl's improvement through her father, who returned to the workshop a week later, radiant with joy and gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," the man said. "You didn't just make a window, you brought hope to our home. You brought life." Simon then understood that when we open our heart's window to the divine, we become instruments of miracles. We don't need to be special people or have extraordinary gifts. We just need to be available, have our hearts open, allow divine love to flow through us to touch other lives. In the months that followed, Simon's workshop became a special place. People came not just to order windows, but to talk, to seek advice, to find peace. And Simon, who was once tormented by insomnia and anxiety, became known as a man of great wisdom and serenity. He had learned the secret: when we keep open the window between our heart and heaven, our entire life is transformed. We sleep in peace because we know someone watches over us. We work with excellence because our hands are guided by divine wisdom. We love with generosity because our hearts are connected to the infinite source of love. But there was still more for Simon to discover. The window that had opened in his heart was just the portal to even deeper dimensions of spiritual experience. As the months passed and Simon grew in wisdom and peace, he began to perceive that his transformation was just a reflection of a much greater truth. All of heaven moved in response to hearts that opened to the divine. My dear child, there are wounds in the human soul that are like deep roots, buried not only in our own experience, but inherited from generations that came before us. These are pains that seem to have no clear origin, fears we can't explain, patterns that repeat without our understanding why. Simon was about to discover one of the most liberating truths of spiritual life. When the heart's window truly opens to me, not only is the present transformed, but the past also finds healing, and the future is rewritten with new possibilities. It was an autumn afternoon when this happened. Simon was working in his workshop, his hands moving with the skill that had become his trademark since our first conversation. The sun filtered through the window, creating golden patterns on the wooden boards, when he suddenly stopped, a memory surfacing in his mind like an unexpected wave. It was the memory of his father, Joachim, a man who had lived tormented by the same anxieties that once tormented Simon. Joachim also suffered from insomnia, also carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, also trembled with anxiety during the manual work he performed. Strange, Simon murmured to himself. I never noticed how much I became like him. And then, as if a curtain had been lifted in his mind, Simon began to see a line of men extending through the generations of his family. His grandfather, who died young due to stress and worries. His grandfather's father, known for his anxious nature and constant fears. A lineage of afflicted souls, each transmitting to the next generation not only blood and name, but also patterns of suffering. In that moment, I manifested in the workshop, no longer as the unknown carpenter of the first night, but in my true divine essence. Though gentle enough not to frighten my beloved Simon. I see that you're understanding, I said, my voice laden with infinite compassion. The wounds aren't just yours, Simon. They belong to an entire lineage that has cried out for healing throughout the centuries. Simon knelt, not out of obligation or ritual, but from a natural reverence that sprang from his heart. Lord, he said, did they also suffer as I suffered? Yes, I confirmed, extending my hand over his head. But you, my son, were chosen to break this cycle. The window that opened in your heart isn't just for your personal healing, it's for the redemption of your entire lineage. Then something extraordinary began to happen. Simon felt a multiple presence around him, as if generations of his ancestors were gathering in that small workshop space. It wasn't frightening, but deeply comforting, like a long-awaited family reunion. Joachim is here, I said softly. Your father is present, and with him all the others who carried this pain through time. Tears of understanding and compassion flowed down Simon's face. He could feel his father's presence, could perceive the relief and gratitude emanating from that soul who finally found the peace that was denied him in life. Forgive me, Father, Simon murmured. Forgive me for judging your anxiety, for not understanding that you were also suffering. The answer came not as words, but as a deep sensation of forgiveness and love. And then, through Simon's open heart window, I began to pour healing, not only over him, but over the entire ancestral line that extended through time. It was as if golden rays of light were projected backward in time, touching every soul that had carried this inheritance of suffering. Generations of men who had lived in anxiety, who had died without finding peace, who had unconsciously transmitted their fears to their children, now received the healing their hearts had always longed for. I feel as if something ancient is being broken, Simon said, amazed. as if invisible chains are being shattered. Exactly, I confirmed. The chains of suffering inheritance are being replaced by chains of blessing. Your children and your children's children will inherit no longer anxiety and fear, but the peace and trust that now flow through you. For hours, we remained in that state of ancestral healing. Simon experienced not only his own liberation, but also became witness to the redemption of an entire lineage. He felt as if he were planting seeds of peace that would bloom in future generations of his family. When the experience was finally complete, Simon rose transformed in an even deeper way. He wasn't just a man whose heart had been healed. He was a patriarch who had altered the destiny of his descendants. "Now I understand," he said, his voice firm and full of purpose. "My healing isn't just about me. It's about breaking patterns that have perpetuated for generations. It's about ensuring that my children inherit blessings, not curses." In the following days, changes became evident not only in Simon, but in his entire family. His wife, who had fallen ill due to stress and worry, began to experience remarkable improvement in her health. His children, who had previously been anxious and fearful, became more confident and serene. Simon's own house was transformed into an environment of peace. Arguments ceased, replaced by loving conversations. Fear of the future was replaced by quiet confidence in divine providence. The window that had opened in Simon's heart had literally opened windows of blessing over his entire lineage. And this transformation expanded even further beyond his immediate family. Neighbors began to notice the difference. Customers who visited his workshop commented on the special atmosphere of the place. Neighborhood children were naturally drawn near his house, as if they could sense the presence of peace that dwelt there. Simon then understood a fundamental truth: when a soul truly opens to the divine, when a life is genuinely transformed, the waves of that transformation spread like circles in water, touching lives and situations far beyond what we can imagine. But God's purpose for Simon was not yet complete. The healing of his ancestral lineage was just the prelude to something even greater, becoming an instrument through which others could also discover their own windows to heaven. My beloved listener, I want you to understand a truth that will transform your perspective on suffering and healing. Every pain you've overcome, every wound that is healed in your heart through my grace, becomes a doorway through which you can reach others who are still suffering. Your healing isn't just for you. It's so you can become a channel of healing for the world. Simon was about to discover this sacred dimension of his transformation. It was a spring morning when a woman he had never seen before arrived at his workshop. She carried a baby of just a few months in her arms, and her eyes revealed an exhaustion that went far beyond physical tiredness. "My name is Martha," she said, her voice trembling. "I heard people talking about you, about how you found peace for your insomnia. I haven't slept in months. Since my son was born, something changed in me. I can't relax. I can't trust that he'll be okay. I stay up all night, checking if he's still breathing, if he's cold, if he's hungry. I'm getting sick from exhaustion, and I'm afraid it's affecting my ability to take care of him." Simon looked at Martha and immediately recognized what he saw. It was a reflection of his own past experience, mirrored in the eyes of another suffering soul. But this time, instead of feeling helpless before another's suffering, he felt something different arise in his heart, an active compassion, a certainty that he could help. "Martha," he said gently, "come, sit here with me. Bring your son to E." Prepared a cozy corner in his workshop. with soft cushions where Martha could sit comfortably with the baby. Then, without hurry, he began to share his own story: sleepless nights, the despair, the feeling of losing control over his own mind. "I knew this pain," he said, his voice laden with genuine understanding. "I know exactly what it's like to live with that constant anxiety, that fear that something terrible will happen if you relax for a moment." Martha began to cry, not from sadness, but from relief. It was the first time in months that someone truly understood what she was going through, who didn't judge her as an overly worried or neurotic mother. Then Simon did something he hadn't consciously planned, but that naturally flowed from his healed heart. He began to teach Martha the same window of the heart exercise that I had taught him. "Close your eyes," he said, "and imagine that inside your chest there's a window that can open to the sky, to God's love that cares for you and your son with infinite tenderness." I was present there, invisible but real, smiling to see how Simon had become a reflection of my own compassion. Through him, I could reach Martha. I could touch her afflicted heart with the same peace that had transformed Simon's life. As Martha breathed deeply, following Simon's guidance, something miraculous began to happen. The baby in her arms, who had been restless since they arrived, began to relax. His little fists opened, his breathing deepened, and a serene smile appeared on his lips as he fell asleep. "He feels it," Martha murmured, amazed. "He feels when I'm calmer." "Yes," Simon confirmed. "Children are like little mirrors of our hearts. When we find peace, they find it too." They spent that whole morning together. Simon shared not only breathing and visualization techniques, but mainly his own healing journey. He spoke about how he had learned to trust, about how he discovered that he didn't need to carry alone the weight of protecting everyone he loved. "God loves your son even more than you do," he told Martha, "and he is watching over both of you every moment. You can rest in that certainty." When Martha prepared to leave, she was a different woman. Her shoulders no longer carried that extreme tension. Her eyes had regained a glimmer of hope, and the baby continued sleeping deeply in her arms, as if he had finally found the security he was seeking. "How can I thank you?" she asked. "You don't need to thank me," Simon replied. "When you're healed, when you find your peace, help another mother who's going through the same thing. That's how healing multiplies." Martha returned several times in the following weeks, and each visit strengthened her more. Gradually, she learned to sleep confidently, knowing that her son was safe in the arms of divine love. And, faithful to the promise she had made to Simon, she began to help other women who came to the workshop with their own fears and anxieties. Soon, Simon's workshop became something more than a workplace. It became a sanctuary of healing, a safe harbor where afflicted souls could find not only human counsel, but a real encounter with the divine presence. People came with the most varied sufferings: men who couldn't support their families and lived tormented by feelings of failure, women who had lost children and couldn't find meaning to continue living, young people who felt lost and without purpose, elderly people who feared death and anguished over the unknown. And Simon, who had once been just a craftsman, tormented by insomnia, became an instrument through which I could touch each of these lives. He didn't position himself as a healer or prophet, but simply as someone who had found the path to healing and wanted to share it. "I was like you," he always said. "I also lived in the darkness of anxiety and fear, but I discovered that there's a window in our hearts that can open to the light. And when that window opens, everything changes." Each person who found healing through Simon's quiet ministry became in turn, a new channel of blessing. It was as if each healed heart became a new window through which heaven could touch earth. Martha, for example, began visiting new mothers throughout the region, sharing not only practical advice about baby care, but mainly the peace she had found. Her visits were like rays of sunlight entering dark rooms, bringing hope where there had been despair. A young man named David, who had come to the workshop contemplating taking his own life because he felt useless and rejected, became one of Simon's helpers. His own transformation from a hopeless young man to a man full of purpose inspired other young people who struggled with similar thoughts. A widow named Anna, who had lost sleep since her husband's death, not only found peace for her own nights, but began to accompany other grieving people, offering them the same comfort she had received. What had begun as one man's personal healing had transformed into a network of compassion that extended throughout the region. And at the center of it all was the fundamental principle that Simon had learned: when we open our heart to the divine, when we allow our inner window to connect with heaven, we become bridges through which others can also find that connection. But there was one last lesson that Simon needed to learn, a final discovery that would crown his entire transformation journey, the secret of how to keep that window always open, even in the face of life's inevitable storms. My dear son, my dear daughter, we have come to the heart of everything I want to teach you tonight. There's a difference between opening the window of the heart once and keeping it permanently open. The first is an experience. The second is a way of living. And it's about this way of living that I want to speak now. A year had already passed since my first encounter with Simon, and his life was unrecognizable. Where there had been anxiety, now serenity flourished. Where there had been sleepless nights, now there was restorative sleep and dreams that brought inspiration for the next day. His workshop had become a place of pilgrimage for souls thirsty for peace. But one morning, Simon woke up with a strange feeling. It was as if a cloud had formed in his heart, partially obscuring the light he had grown accustomed to feeling old. Worries tried to resurface. Whispers of fear sought space in his mind. He got up, walked to his workshop and tried to concentrate on work. But his hands trembled slightly, not like before, but enough to remind him of who he had been. Panic began to set in. Could it be that the healing wasn't permanent? Am I going back to being the tormented man I was? It was at that moment that I appeared again, not as I had done the first time, but like a friend who arrives at the exact moment when he's most needed. Simon, I said, sitting beside him on the workshop bench, why are you worried? Lord, he replied, his voice heavy with concern, I feel like the window of my heart is closing again. The old worries are coming back. I'm afraid of losing everything I've gained. I smiled at him with all the tenderness of my heart. My dear Simon, you're learning one of the most important lessons of spiritual life. The window of the heart isn't something that opens once and remains open forever without care. It's like a garden that needs to be watered daily, like a flame that needs to be constantly fed. He looked at me with curiosity mixed with relief. So it's normal to feel these fluctuations. Completely normal, I confirmed. Life on earth is made of seasons. There will be days of radiant sunshine and days of storms. The secret isn't to avoid the storms, but to learn to keep the window open even when the winds blow strong. Then I began to teach him what I call the practice of the eternal window, a set of simple but powerful habits that keep our heart constantly connected to the divine. Every morning, I explained, before you even fully open your eyes, dedicate a few minutes to acknowledge my presence. You don't need elaborate prayers or complicated rituals. Simply acknowledge, Jesus is with me. The window of my heart is open to him. Simon nodded, absorbing every word. During the day, I continued, whenever you feel tension beginning to accumulate, stop for a moment. Take 3 deep breaths and visualize the window opening a little more. Remember, you're not alone. I'm carrying with you any burden that seems too heavy. And at night, he asked. Night is the most important time, I replied. Before sleeping, do a loving review of the day. Not to judge or criticize yourself, but to place in my hands everything you've lived. The joys, give thanks for them. The difficulties, give them to me. The mistakes, ask forgiveness and receive my grace. It's like cleaning the window of the heart, preparing it so that my light can enter even clearer the next day. We spent hours talking about these practices. I also taught him about the importance of conscious gratitude, not just being thankful when good things happen, but cultivating an attitude of gratitude that recognizes my presence even in difficult circumstances. Simon, I said, you noticed that your greatest healing didn't come when your life became perfect and without problems. It came when you learned to live the problems in a different way, connected to me. He reflected on this and smiled. It's true, I still have concerns about the business. I still worry about my family, but they don't consume me like they did before. Exactly, the open window doesn't eliminate life's challenges. It changes how you face them. Instead of facing them alone, you face them with me. Instead of being dominated by them, you use them as opportunities for your faith to grow. In the following days, Simon began to faithfully practice these guidelines. And soon he discovered that that cloud he had felt in his heart completely dissipated. More than that, he developed a kind of spiritual sensitivity that allowed him to perceive when the window was beginning to close, and immediately take the necessary measures to keep it open. This sensitivity became one of his greatest tools for helping others. He could perceive when someone arrived at his workshop with a closed heart, and knew exactly which practices to suggest for each specific situation. For people like Martha, who struggled with maternal anxiety, he taught specific prayers of surrender. For parents, for young people like David, who battled depression, he shared techniques of active gratitude. For the bereaved like Anna, he offered practices of communion with those who had departed through prayer. But the most beautiful thing of all was seeing how Simon had become a living window through which others could see me. His words carried my peace. His gestures reflected my compassion. His presence radiated my light. And so, my beloved listener, we come to the moment to close this story. But not without first you understanding that it's not just about Simon. It's about you. It's about the window that exists in your own heart, waiting to open. My dear son, my dear daughter. As you listened to me tell Simon's story, I hope you understood that you were actually hearing your own story. Every struggle Simon faced, every sleepless night he lived, every moment of despair he experienced, all of this resonates in your own heart because the human experience of suffering and the search for peace is universal. But I also hope you understood the most important message of all. Just as there was a solution for Simon, there's a solution for you. The window that opened in his heart can open in yours too. The peace he found is available to you at this exact moment. It doesn't matter how long you've been struggling with insomnia, with anxiety, with fears that seem to have no end. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried to find relief and couldn't. It doesn't matter how impossible the idea that your life can really change might seem. I am here, now, extending my hand to you in the same way I extended it to Simon. The window of your heart can open tonight. As you prepare to sleep, remember the words I whispered in Simon's ear. You are not alone. You never were. I am here, carrying with you everything that seems too heavy. Breathe with me now. Breathe in my peace. Breathe out your worries. Breathe. In my presence, ... Breathe out your loneliness. Breathe in my love. Breathe out your fears. Feel how the window of your heart gently opens, allowing my light to enter and illuminate every dark corner of your soul. Through this window, pour out to me all your anguish, and allow me to pour out on you all my love. Sleep in peace tonight, knowing that I watch over you. And tomorrow, when you wake up, remember, you have an open window to heaven, and through it, all things are possible. Good night, my beloved. Rest in my arms,